Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to tackle the Montessori approach to reading. And listen, if you're picturing flashcards and endless sight word drills, you can just throw that idea right out the window. We're about to explore a totally different path, one that actually follows a child's natural brain development. And this quote right here, it just nails it. We're not talking about memorizing stuff. We're talking about a super carefully sequenced journey that takes a child from just hearing a sound to seeing a symbol to actually building words and then finally to understanding what they mean. It's a process that works with the brain, not against it. So that whole journey, it breaks down into this beautiful three-stage arc. First, we're going to look at how to train the ear to hear the tiniest little sounds in language. Then, get ready for this, there's a fascinating twist. The child learns to write before they can read. And finally, we'll see how all of those skills just blossom and the reader is born. So, let's dive in. Okay, let's start at the very, very beginning with stage 1. Before a child even lays eyes on a letter, they have to learn to hear it. This whole stage is all about something called phonemic awareness, basically picking out the individual sounds in words. Think of it as the invisible foundation for everything else we're going to build. So what's the first tool we use to build a bridge from the world of sound to the world of symbols? It's this one, the sandpaper letters. And honestly, their genius is all in their simplicity. The real genius here is how this material gets so many senses involved. The child traces the letter with 2 fingers while saying its sound, not its name, so we say not M. That gritty sandpaper texture, that's the magic. It gives them tactile feedback that literally builds the muscle memory for writing right into their fingertips. And as you can see, that cost difference is huge, which makes this so accessible if you're up for a little crafting. So how do you introduce these letters? With this super elegant method called the 3-period lesson. First, you just name it. This is simple. Second, and this is the longest and most important part, is recognition. You ask, show me or can you put on the table? You're just cementing that knowledge without any pressure. And only when they have that down solid do you move to the 3rd period, recall. What sound is this? It's pretty much a no-fail way to learn. All right, on to stage 2, and this is where the Montessori method really flips the whole script on traditional learning. Kids learn to build words, to write them, way before we ever expect them to read. I know, it might sound totally backwards, but believe me, there's a really profound logic to it. And this chart shows you exactly why. Encoding, which is just writing, is an active and concrete thing to do. A child has a word in their head, they break it down into sounds they already know, and they physically build it. It's hands-on. But decoding, or reading, that's passive and abstract. They're just looking at squiggles on a page and trying to translate them. For a young mind, starting with the active, concrete task just makes so much more sense. And the key that unlocks this entire stage is probably the single most important language material in a Montessori classroom, the movable alphabet. You can basically think of this as a spelling toolbox. It's a box that's filled with multiple copies of every letter. So a child can grab a little object, maybe a toy cat, say the name slowly, at, and then go digging for those letters to build the word. The big insight here is that spelling becomes a fun, hands-on puzzle, not some abstract test of their memory. And look at that cost again. The DIY option makes this so affordable. And that brings us to stage 3. This is where all the pieces finally click into place. After all that work training their ear and building words with their hands, reading just starts to happen. It's almost spontaneous. The child goes from just sounding out words to actually understanding the ideas on the page. And this happens through a really logical, step-by-step journey. The child starts with what's called the pink series. These are only simple, 3-letter phonetic words like cat and pin. No tricks, no exceptions. Once they've got that, they move to the blue series, which adds in consonant blends like flag and milk. And finally, the green series introduces phonograms, letter combinations that make a single sound like sh or I. This is how they start to crack the code of English, with each step building methodically on the last one. So how do we know they're really getting it, that they're not just sounding out words? Well, that's where the command cards come in. They're these simple little cards with actions on them. Hop, run, touch your nose. The child reads the card to themselves and then just does the action. Their comprehension is proven through movement, not some quiz. The action itself is the proof. It's just brilliant. Okay, so with all these cool materials and methods, what's your role in all this as the parent or the educator? Well, it's a huge mental shift. You are not the teacher, you are the guide. Your job isn't to pour knowledge into their heads, but to carefully prepare an environment where the child can discover it all for themselves. And listen, preparing that environment does not have to break the bank. You could totally create a full, effective DIY setup for about $150. Or you could invest in beautiful, premium materials for over $1,000. But for most people, the best path is usually the smart hybrid approach in the middle. The key here is just to be strategic about it. Spend your money on the core, tactile materials that are really hard to make well yourself, like the sandpaper letters and the movable alphabet. But everything else, the reading cards, the command cards, all the little objects for the sound baskets, you can print those for cheap or find them at the dollar store. This makes the entire method completely achievable for pretty much any budget. So really, it all comes down to this. This is the ultimate takeaway. You don't teach a child to read, you build the conditions for reading to happen. The materials do the heavy lifting, the lessons provide the structure, and the child's own mind does the learning. Your job as the guide is to trust the process, set out the tools, and then just step back and watch the magic happen. So, I want to leave you with this final thought to kind of chew on. The whole Montessori method is built on trusting the child, not on constantly correcting them. So what would change in how we approach education if our main goal wasn't to fix every little mistake, but instead to connect the child with the tools they need to find the answers for themselves?